Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for April. I think. It could be April. It could just be an extension to March. Everybody's talking about just keeping March going until everything sorts out. And then when everything gets sorted out, then we can go in April and we can just start. But for some people, that is, they want March gone. They want it to be a memory. They want it to be in the past. They almost just want to jump in a ship on the sea and forget about it all. They almost want to be jumping on a sea, forgetting about it all so that they're in forgotten waters. If you're going to be talking about forgotten waters, there's only one person you can speak to at the moment to talk about forgotten waters. He's standing there in a hat. It's not a pirate hat. It's a plaid hat. Because I'm talking to Joseph Arthur Ellis, working alongside Plaid Hat Games to talk about their latest release coming out on pre-order. It's just now. It's going to be released very, very soon. It's called Forgotten Waters, and Joseph is going to tell us all about it. Aren't you, sir?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I'm excited to talk to you. And there is, I don't know if you've been doing any remote gaming, but I have been on Tabletop Simulator, and it's been better than anything else. Better than even calling and talking to friends has been finding a way to play a game with them.
I have currently been playing, because I have a very excitable 7-year-old in the house. We were lucky enough to be sent a copy of Flip Over Frog, which is a very simple tile-laying game from Hub Games. So I've been playing that because he has been getting up in the morning earlier before all of us. He's been taking that game downstairs and playing it by himself.
What is it? It's tile-laying. It's not dexterity.
No.
Okay.
So he's just been playing it. He's just been laying the tiles, flipping over the tile pieces, and then when I come down, I go downstairs and he beats me thoroughly every single time. And I'd like to think that it begins my day full of joy, but actually it puts me on a bit of a downer for the day. So tomorrow morning, I'm going down with my copy of Mice and Mystics, and I'll show him what losing's all about.
By dragging him down with you in a cooperative game.
That's all I'm going to be saying. Yes, we're just going to be ramping it up, and we'll see where his smiles are. We'll just see where he goes. That little sunshine's going to just cloud over. That's all I'm going to say. But no, I have installed Tabletop Simulator because everybody keeps talking about it, and I have a horrific thing with technology. It always scares me a bit that I'm going to end up pressing something the wrong way and I would potentially break the internet, but we'll just have to see how it goes. But I understand keeping the community up at the moment is really important for so many people, because for so many people this is one of the sides of gaming. The social interaction with other people really kind of helps people kind of get on their buy to buy. What about, you mentioned, plugging into Tabletop Simulator. How are you doing in general? Is things that it must be a strange mixture of excitement and concern and nervousness, because there's a creation of yours is kind of going out there and people are going to be getting their hands on it and potentially playing it. So for yourself, what's kind of like, what's the sea forecast? Is it stormy? Is it calm? Where's your mind at, Captain?
This has been like a very long-term project and my dream project, and so there's been a lot of drama throughout its development, and so we feel like we couldn't be more confident in the game, and we think people are going to really love it. Our main concern is literally physically getting it to people, and the ways that's going to break down. And we've got limited copies, in our warehouse, aka Colby's garage, at the moment, that we will be able to send out. But after that, we're relying on a lot of the system to get this going. But we've gotten a lot of positive. So this past weekend, or just before that, we started being able to install the voiceovers for the app for the game. And they've been working on that for weeks. It was the first thing Colby did once he bought the company back, was he said, okay, I'm going to invest in voiceovers for this. And that's a kind of thing, it's a kind of move you can make, once you're independent. And as we're so blown away. Actually, just a week or two ago, Colby and I were talking, and we had some concern because we've always played the game without voiceovers and had a blast. And we started panicking, like, oh, you know what? What if that's part of the entertainment? Like, we make a joke in the game, but you are the one who said it, so you feel like you contributed, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
What if it's less fun? And so we put in some options, which I'm glad we did in the app, to like, okay, hey, if you've got a theatrical group, maybe you want to read this yourself. Otherwise, the voiceovers. But then once we actually started getting the recordings in and hearing them, all of that worry to me went away, because the performances are incredible, that it just gets me so charged, especially because people are going to be playing this solo and, or in small groups a little more, whereas we play tested it a lot more with, 5 to 7 people, because that's how we had originally envisioned the game. But I think that the voiceovers add a lot to the lower player counts and being able to kind of experience it together. So, yeah, I'm still nervous, but people love the game when they play it. Just can't wait for people to do it, because, we didn't have full control over the timing of everything when we went independent. So we just had to charge forward, and we've promoted the game, but without a lot of people being able to play it or describe it. And that's all going to come crashing in soon. So I'm excited to see it. Reviewers have their copies.
So are you? What's your relationship with Plaid Hat just now? Are you one of the employees there? Are you kind of like being signed up on like a publisher agreement with them at the moment?
No, I'm an employee. So I was a fan of Summoner Wars way back in the day. Started freelancing the website in 2012. Dead of Winter blew up, and so Colby and Isaac brought me on in early 2015. Because they had more resources to do some stuff like that. And so I've been working full time in board games since then. I started as just worrying about tech stuff, websites, and fulfillment systems and things like that, and playtesting, administrating playtesting. Moved slowly, drifted into development and game development, and eventually, was doing as much of that. But once we switched to Asmodee, I ended up joining their web team, because that's just sort of what made sense with the way the company was structured. And been working basically for Forgotten Waters. Been working mostly on my own time on it, including on the app until Colby called me that fateful day and was like, "Here's what's happening. I'm getting it back. We're relaunching with Forgotten Waters." And it was like so exciting, but it was also like, oh no, everything is now riding on this.
Did he do a Blues Brothers kind of, we're getting the band back together?
a montage?
kind of thing. Did he do that? Well, did he do like a John Belushi? Did he turn up and he'd taken the plaid hat off and he'd replaced it with a black trilby. He was wearing shades, the black suit.
Really, the only sad thing is, and I know you talked to Jerry about this, maybe you guys referenced it a little, but we did have to lose some staff, to because of losing Dead of Winter, and obviously there were parts of the company that were purchasable and parts that you'd be crazy to sell, right? So, So, I would love to work more with those people in the future. I was the one who kind of got to come back, So excited about that. I've never been. Forgot how much more productive I am for a small little team who's all in together. There's nothing. I don't know what your work situation's like that, but to me, there's nothing more energizing than that.
Yeah, I think when you've got a direct effect on everybody that's around you, and you're actually looking at the owner of the company, and you can see them walking around, and everything's a little bit more transparent. And I'm not saying that being part of a huge organization is a terrible thing or anything like that, but you get a general and a general feel for things when the management team and even people that have almost like an emotional vested interest in the company, you're there and you can see their eyes and you can see what's kind of happening. Because I think one of the things that was clear to me from the conversation that I had with Jerry was that the Asmodee situation was a huge sideswipe to a lot of people, and it was a lot of the shedding of jobs which has happened across the industry was a general surprise to everybody that it kind of happened to, and everybody was like, well, things are going, sales and board games and stuff like that are doing really, really well. Tabletop is in a huge golden era, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, we're cutting costs, and we're, the digital part, Fantasy Flight lost people, and you guys kind of lost people as well, so it kind of became as a bit of a sideswipe. So when you're saying, yeah, it's good to be back in a team, that's the setup that I've got to work in. It's nice to, even though we're all working remotely, there's still that kind of that working relationship there that, if there's, it's going to be very, very surprising if somebody turned around and says, well, actually, the job is kind of no longer there. From your background then, it sounded to me that am I right in saying from an education point of view, you came from like a technical background then? Is that where your wheelhouse was with regards to that?
Yeah, I've been programming and stuff since I was a kid. I was always more interested in making video games than even playing them, and did QBasic on our little IBM DOS machine, and so I've always done that, but I realized actually even being part of a full-sized web team like I was the last couple of years that I don't think too much like other programmers. I think I'm a little bit more mission-oriented instead of sort of knowledge or technical-oriented. It's more like I can be driven by a goal. So that's why Colby and I have always gotten along, because I just find places to fill in and things that need done, and I just happen to have skills to apply, computers or whatever to the solution. And that's why a small team is good for me. But yeah, that is how I was doing like a Summoner Wars blog, and Colby caught wind of that, and we ended up connecting, and we both lived in the same state. And that probably didn't hurt either here in Ohio. He's in Texas now, but...
Oh, yeah. So the games, for you, you kind of almost change your hobby into kind of like the career part of things, but then it's not a case that you've been involved in the industry on a technical level. You're now taking it to full circle to actually being involved in a kind of a creation of a game yourself. So have you always been working along on little things anyway at the side? Were you a little bit of a designer always, kind of like?
I would say not any more than the average gamer. I mean, I think almost everybody has some brainstorms swirling around, but But I remember even on staff, after being on staff, talking to Dave, our graphic designer, and being like, I got no desire to be a designer. Do you, Dave? And he didn't either. But things just evolve, and the more, like I said, I was administrating our play tests, and at first it was just like, get people to sign up, work with, give resources to the designer. But, time goes on and you get more opinionated. And the big turn was the game Raxon, which I just had an idea for a marketing campaign for a game. And I brought it to the team and like, oh, what if we had a game where was about, like the zombie virus, and it spreads that way, and that's the only way to get it. And so I was just working on that marketing idea, and I just over time ended up being the one who designed the game for that. And I learned a lot through that, and I'm very proud of the game, but it's a very small, it's not an ambitious, as far as a tabletop experience, it's pretty simple, but that's what kind of forced me through the fire, which was, also involved building a big complicated website to do the sales. And, it was kind of a controversial thing, but it was just going for it with an idea, basically. So it's that kind of stuff. I mean, same with Forgotten Waters. We ended up doing this app. I ended up writing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm always going to find ways to apply every tool at my disposal. And eventually I found a point where we needed a game. I would say that's how I got into game design.
But in terms of, say, your own preferences as a gamer, I mean, have you ended up kind of designing games that you would want to play yourself? I mean, I've heard that said kind of a lot of times. So does your collection, does that reflect quite well on Raxon and kind of Forgotten Waters in terms of, you mentioned Summoner Wars, so I'm assuming that you've got all of the Summoner Wars.
Yes.
Did you play Ashes as well, or are we going to have a falling out about it?
Oh, no, yeah, I love Ashes. Actually, I'll tell you what, in the company, I didn't like it until we had graphic design and art, and those two things made the game come together, which is a weird, I mean, that's something I learned, working for Plaid Hat Games, is the way presentation can make a difference. Before I wouldn't say that I cared about that, but that was a game where it took me from like a 5 to a 10, and I ended up playing it a ton. Some of that is just, it's nice to look nice, but some of it's usability and things like that, Dave and Fernanda were able to provide with doing the visuals. But yeah, like I like a lot of those kinds of games. I love Netrunner, but never had people to play with. And my group loves games like Root and things like that, Cyclades, or however you say it, these territory control, but with some Euro elements. I don't have too much of a desire to make one because I feel like it's a very well-rounded out genre. There's a lot of really, there's a lot of variety and a lot of options in it. I mean, we play a ton of Root, so I'd have to start by coming up with something I like better than that. But yeah, I will say with Forgotten Waters, it is, I was definitely unsatisfied with the pirate games available. At least the ones that were trying to be more thematic. I mean, there's some like probably my favorite is Jamaica, but it's a racing game. It's not about pirate adventures. But as far as the games that are about pirate adventures, I love pirates. Loved Monkey Island growing up, the video game, so I'm always interested in that theme. And I've always felt, I was just talking to Isaac today, that we really hope that this hits the same way as Dead of Winter, where there is a ton of zombie games, but subconsciously, I think most people felt like something's not right. This isn't feel, even though people weren't complaining about the offerings, it just didn't feel like the zombie game that a lot of people were looking for. We hope we can have the same effect with this, that that even though there's tons of pirate games, nobody's asking for more, that people will sort of realize that it was a part of their pirate game heart that was missing the whole time. For those of us who like that kind of thing, that's the idea, and that's definitely where this game came from for me, was wanting a game where we're all on a story together instead of just being captains where I'm not paying attention to what you're doing and we just intersect once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that, and I remember speaking to John at the time about Dead of Winter, which was one of the reasons he actually guested on the show, because I really like Dead of Winter, please come on the show, please. Yeah. And he said, yeah, which was that the zombies were there, and they were ever present, and they were an overarching kind of threat, but the interesting thing was always the interaction and the core mechanics between the players. That's what brought out the emergent kind of elements in terms of the story, or the kind of the traitor mechanic to Dead of Winter. There was always that threat in the background. There was always the big theme in the background, but it was the kind of the struggle to make sure you had the right supplies to kind of fulfill the objective, and that's what kind of made it really, really interesting. It's also what made it kind of one of my kind of favorite games.
It's funny because we had, we had, right after we released Dead of Winter, we had like that poll for, what do you want the next Crossroads game to be? As if there was going to be one the next year, and it took a long time, and Gen 7 eventually came out, but it wasn't exactly what people were looking for. But it turns like Dead of Winter, it makes me think that Dead of Winter is really special because it's just doing something that's actually pretty hard to replicate. And I think I think you used the word emergent, and I think it is maybe the best emergent narrative game, as far as you could read a little paragraph from the rule book if you want, for introducing the main objective. But the story is it's a thematic story, but it's all in just what happens spontaneously in the game. And I can't think of another game that, a lot of games have dramatic moments and fun, a fun story to tell afterwards, but Dead of Winter, without inserting a lot of written narrative besides the crossroad cards, manages to really feel like you're in this zombie story without that, just from the items you find and the dice you roll, and then of course those crossroad cards adding little narrative moments helps too. So we've been seeking the next one of that, and I think with Isaac, we eventually gave up on copying the formula, and with this game are trying to capture the spirit a little more, even though it's a very different game, and we hope it works.
Did you end up doing a lot of soul searching with Gen 7? Because I remember there was a fair amount of hype kind of surrounding it, because it wasn't labeled as almost like a kind of a like-minded follow-up for Dead of Winter. It was like, well, here's another Crossroads game. And did you guys kind of then, when it didn't do as well kind of critically, because I know people that played it said they weren't entirely happy, or it played, there was something a little bit off from it, that it didn't play as well as what they expected, especially coming from the same stable. Did you guys kind of go back and strip it back and say, well, what is working here and what isn't working here? Or did you just file under, well, this is something we got to learn from and kind of move on?
Yeah, so during pretty much that whole development of that game, I was on that Asmodee web team, so I didn't have a lot of direct influence on it. There's some no-brainers, like you can't fill out a game's box with cards. People don't accept that as as people undervalue cards basically at what they cost, because the card game had to be $100, and it's because it had like 700 cards, And that's just, what cards cost if you get enough of them. So there's some no-brainers, like we don't want to go down that road again. Whereas, Aftermath or whatever could be 80 or 85 or whatever it was, and it's cool miniatures. So people are all for that. They're willing to spend more. But I think probably I can't speak for those guys since I didn't work on it too much, but it was from an outside designer. So I think that Plaid Hat and, really a few other studios, I just think about Fantasy Flight, of course, and I know Cole Worley is, on staff at Leader Games, for example. We have our designers in the company, and that's probably for a reason, I guess, that we kind of have a feel for what we're going for, and for thematic games like that, I think that kind of works where everybody's kind of in it together, and that benefits people. That's a difference I can think of, but otherwise I couldn't. That'd be a good tough question for Colby and see what he has to say about it. Otherwise,
I get it because I know that when people sign up a game for to be published, then it's usually okay, so here's my game, publish it. But that doesn't happen like that. What happens is it then goes and you get a game developer coming in and saying, okay, well, what works and what doesn't. And in some cases, a theme will completely change, or some major mechanics will really change before it comes out. And I think that what you've got a danger with is if you've got a controlling arm saying, okay, well, we're just going to hand in this idea and you have to make a game out of it, then sometimes the heart of the game can get cut away. And so it's not a case that the mechanics are there, the art's there and everything else is there, but the bit that kind of added that little kind of je ne sais quoi just isn't quite there, and that's why sometimes things don't work. Because I've played a lot of games where I've went, this seems okay, but it's just missing that, I don't know what it is, kind of thing. And that's what causes some people to go, I'm not kind of going with that. In terms of, let's talk about a little bit more about the kind of the mechanics side of things. If I am kind of sitting down to play Forgotten Waters, one of the things that's important to me is that for me, because my time is quite short, that I can, if I'm going to play a campaign, it's easier for me to dip in and dip out of a game. I mean, what can I expect with Forgotten Waters? What are you bringing to my captain's table, Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, so, I mean, it is an adventure game. Bistro, our writer, described it that way on a recent podcast, and I thought that's how it needs to be described, because that's what it's about. It's about an adventure. It's not exactly a campaign game. It has 5 adventures, and they're each split up into 2 parts, so you could describe it as 5 mini campaigns, but that's probably stretching it as far as the word campaign goes. But each adventure has its own captain, and by the end of the adventure, in some way, you're going to need a new captain by the end of the adventure. And these captains have a lot of personality. It's a game. Let me just check what you're asking. You want to know a little more how the game plays, or more about stringing together, dipping in and out of a campaign and in the character and stuff like that?
Anything. Surprise me. This is it. It's your night. It's your night, Joseph.
So
I want to know whys, and I want to know hows, and I want to know what's going to make me, basically stick my peg leg back on, drool a bit, and put on the worst pirate accent that people haven't heard in the last couple of weeks.
Sure. So what this game does is throw you in. And I've taught it, some people probably won't like this teaching style, but I've sometimes taught it because the first scenario, you start and you're in this port town. And you've had a little intro paragraph, but you turn to page 19 and you're at the port town. And I just say, you know what, we're just going to play the first round because this first round's pretty low stakes. You can choose whatever. And what you turn to the location book page, and it's not like an adventure book game where you have sort of a set way to do combat and to do all these rules. All the pages is a list of about 7 actions. And you spend about 40 seconds planning your actions and you just make one simple choice. Do I want to go to the fortune teller? Do I want to go to the bar? Do I want to just go on an adventure with the captain? Do I want to go to the market? And do I want to go search the woods? And of course, you're competing, turn order is determined based on infamy, and if you're at the end, you might just get stuck working the ship or something like that. So you kind of want to move up to do your own thing. But you make that one choice, and then once you do the action, you're probably either going to just do a check with a die roll and adding skills, or you're going to make another choice maybe. And it ends up being this incredible canvas for the narrative to take shape, where we're all just doing one simple thing, and we've pared the decisions down, but the decisions are still meaningful. But it's also just kind of wild. So on that first turn, it might be that the first person goes to the market, they roll decent, they're able to buy 3 things, so they get some supplies for the ship, but then they spend some supplies for a tattoo for themselves. And then the next person goes into the woods and they roll great. And, normally if they got a 12 or a 13 or something, they'd get some nice supplies or maybe a treasure for themselves. But instead, they're going to go in the app and read a story written by Mr. Bistro that and voice acted by these incredible voice actors. And they're going to get the story itself feels like a reward, but they'll also, probably be rewarded. Or maybe 1 out of 10 times they'll actually be sorry that happened, and I can't spoil the stories. But then, the other person...
Yeah, come on.
and then the other person, they work the ship and, they improve the haul a little bit, but they're kind of pissed off that they had to do that, so they also steal a treasure from somebody else. And then the last person goes to the fortune teller, and, what happens to them is just a complete mystery. And so you have this... I was talking to Isaac today, and we were saying, we know that anyone who loves Tales of the Arabian Nights will love this game, but we've hesitated to state it that way because both of us dislike the game, Tales of the Arabian Nights. Okay. So I think what we're trying to do is insert the stories and the thing that people do love, and the people who love it, they should love it and they should have a blast with it. Yeah. And I think we try to understand what the part of it is that people love and try to bring that and bring it with some of the best writing, in board games from Mr. Bistro, especially with the voiceovers. But put it in a system that feels like you have really meaningful choices and really meaningful tension between the players and things like that. So I think that on the one hand, it's hard to describe what's unique about the mechanics, but at the end of the day, I think it is a really unique new way to present an adventure game like this. And I hope people see that. So I'm describing it a little less marketing-y and a little bit more with mechanics because it's just what I'm into. I love to geek out about, game design that I love and stuff. But hopefully if you and some of the people listening like that too, some of this makes sense to them and what's their appetite a little bit.
So, one of the questions that comes up whenever you get kind of like technology involved is how much am I going to be heads down, thumbs up in an app, and how much of it is going to be based on kind of like my lovely Luddite sensibilities of riffling through pieces of paper.
Right. I think you will be pleased. I hope we win over some people who are on that side of it. And I definitely have considered myself that way at some points of not really wanting an app. There's definitely have been games that have gone overboard with it that I say are a few steps too far. But so first of all, you will have your ship log is on paper. And so you save your game on the ship log. The sort of the state of the game and what you've done is written down on the ship log and what's left to do. And then same with your player sheet. So each player has a unique pirate that's one of 21 different pirates that are in the game. And that is a sheet of paper too. And they have their unique skill tree and their unique backstory. And this is very silly, but we have like a little Mad Libs part of it where you fill in your backstory with some random adjectives and nouns, and that actually, affects what you end up reading. And all of that is on paper. So in that sense, it feels very old school, that you have a pencil or pen and are writing this stuff. However, and we were developing the game as all analog with a bunch of event books in the box. But as these scenarios got more ambitious and longer and more sort of branching trees for, when you go to an entry, depending on if this is on the ship log, do this. If that is on the ship log, do that. And it was really becoming a chore to flip around the event book. Meanwhile, I was working full time, developing marketing websites and web store sites and stuff like that. So Colby came to me with the app idea, and I didn't have time, or probably the political, power within the organization to, devote a bunch of resources to an app. So I kind of sort of negotiated with Colby, well, what if it was, just this? And he said, what if it's that? And we came to a place where the app, it replaces a sand timer, which is kind of a no-brainer. That saves everybody money, and it's more consistent. Sand timers, I don't know if you've ever timed a sand timer over and over again, but it's very inconsistent. But so that's a no-brainer. But otherwise, all it's really doing is replacing like an event book with entry numbers. Well, it's replacing several of them. And so the game it's really just, we need a little tidbit, we need an effect, we need a story right here. And instead of flipping around and having to maybe flip 2 or 3 times, and also I was terrified of the chance of making a huge mistake and having some misprint that led people to a dead end. When we tried to, because at the end we would need to mix up the numbers, you know what I mean? So that 2 totally, wasn't next to 3 and things like that. And so it's so simple. It's also it's a web app. It use a new technology called progressive web app, so you can download it to a device and use it offline in airplane mode or whatever. But it's this just very simple thing. You put in a number, you read a story, you might make a choice, like it could be a crossroads moment, or it might ask you what's written on the ship log to decide what to give you. But it's the simplest possible app I can imagine for the game. We didn't replace the player sheets or the map or the ship log or all these things. And meanwhile, it gives us the power to give way more variety in the stories that happen to you. And it gives you the power to do these voiceovers, which, like we discussed earlier, I can't even believe. It's so far beyond my expectations, and it's going to elevate the game so much. And just like a week ago, we weren't even, we knew they'd be good, but we didn't know how much they would elevate the experience. So I hope that wins people over. And if we go bankrupt, I will, that we've committed to making it open source too, so that anybody can host it.
Well, that's pretty cool. Does that mean with it being an integral part of the story as well, is that it makes it easier for you to add on kind of like expansions and extra stories and things like that as well? As time goes on, you can update to add in kind of extra quests without people having to necessarily go out and buy kind of like a physical expansion kind of going forward.
Yeah, that's kind of it certainly gives us the ability to do that. I'd say it's an open question from a business model standpoint, because like I said, it's a web app, it's not on an app store. So right now we couldn't charge people for content if we wanted to. We'd just have to put it up there for free. I'm imagining different levels of success for the game. Maybe there's maybe if it's a huge runaway success, then it's okay, let's invest in making it a native app so we can have in-app purchases and we can start writing scenarios. And But then there's probably some middle level where it's like, well, we've had this, we have a couple ideas for a couple more scenarios. Let's just invest small by, just putting it out there and giving it to people and things like that. There's probably some other level where we release the tool that we're using to build the data files, and open it up for anybody to kind of make a file that someone can load in and play. And there's all kinds of possibilities. I mean, most importantly, if we made some huge mistake, we can fix it instantly, and that gives you peace of mind. But there are possibilities. It all depends on how people respond to the game, and it's amazing how once something. I'm thinking about this more as a fan of movies and other art. Once something's out there, it's its own thing, right? And you can't predict how people are going to interact with it, right? Maybe people would be ambitious and would write these scenarios, and it would be more of a community thing, or maybe, or maybe it would be that people would be so excited for a new scenario that we could really invest money for more voiceovers and sell it, and people would be dying for it. We don't know yet, and we can't control it, so. We'll see. Yeah. All we can do is try to build it as flexible as possible to have really good narrative and story, but also have a solid foundation of mechanics, because I don't know who's going to love it. Will it be the, real strategic groups who could kind of break Dead of Winter once in a while because they would tank the game if they weren't going to meet their secret objective, or will it be more of the narrative sort of rollicking groups? We will see. Where do you lie on that spectrum on Dead of Winter?
We've played it less as it depends on the type of group you were playing with.
Yeah.
Because you got some people that got really, really into kind of getting involved with the characters, especially if they were playing it like once or twice. They wanted to play that character. You got other people that were more interested in using the character as a way to not act how they would usually act when they were kind of like playing a game.
Yeah.
As well.
That's something board games are greater for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like using kind of like a kind of like a role-playing kind of capability. I think it would, for me, what appeals to something like, say, Forgotten Waters is that there's a strong frame. There's two things. There's a strong enough framework there for the game to live and breathe by itself with people just reading out the excerpts from the story. But also on the same time of it, if people wanted to go in and kind of really, really ham it up, then you've got the opportunity for people to take it to that kind of next level, which I find is kind of really, really, really kind of interesting. And I notice that you've spent the time to invest in the app as opposed to investing in, say, like miniatures, which, because I saw there was two things that struck me. I thought, because I like, miniatures are fine, okay, and everybody likes miniatures, but miniatures can become much of a muchness after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really where I'm at. I agree with you, but it's I really just personal
like the
opinion.
Well, I really like the standees. I mean, the captain is dead. I don't know if you've ever played that at all.
No,
Joe,
but I know a good bit about it, yeah.
Yeah, the captain is dead, right? You've got basically these acrylic kind of standees, which have got beautiful illustrations on each side. And they really, really fit in with the kind of the nouveau kind of art, kind of decor, kind of graphical kind of represent, the art that's in there, the style of it. The standees fit in kind of really, really well. And that's what I saw about Forgotten Waters was they were using standees. Now, I don't know, again, if this was potentially, because of the current situation with the company, if it was a case of, well, miniatures are instantly going to turn like a $60 game into a $90 game, and that is going to potentially, in the current climate, stop more people from wanting to go into it. And I liked when I saw the video, the unboxing video, today, actually, which was kind of like, well, here's all the standees and here's the ships. That doesn't put me, that kind of doesn't put me off.
Yeah.
Because I've got a lot of games that have a lot of lovely minis in them. And if I was into painting, I could see the attraction, but I'm not really into painting. But the artwork on it kind of stood out for me, and the individual kind of standees that you have. So going back, I'd like to see it as a framework so people can do, for me. So depending on the group I'm playing with, other people will get right into it, and we'll all be kind of wearing eye patches and spitting each other and throwing coins around the table. Or if you want to have a nice kind of just a role-playing, quiet, subdued game, we can kind of do both.
Yeah,
which is where I would be with it.
It does break my heart a little bit that it's going to be hard for people to play at 5, 6, 7 players at first. The game is just as, it works great at any player count, including our 1 and 2 player variants that are on the app. But that's, to me, that it's that more rollicking, loud, boisterous atmosphere where I just love the most. And I tend to be like a pretty relatively quiet person, but in a game, my personality really shoots out there, and and that there's tons of there's stories that you read, but what we're really excited about is the way this is something like Dead of Winter, because we've got 90 different treasure cards, 90 different story cards. And plenty of effects that are going to lead also to a lot of emergent story between the players. And that's the kind of stuff you really lean into and, make a story about. I think about my friend finding a pet goat, and, of course the goat can be discarded for supplies, meaning cooked, but she didn't want to do that, and we needed the supplies. So when I got a chance to steal a treasure, not selfishly, just doing the right thing for the ship, I took her goat and I, got us some supplies. And obviously, she's looking for some revenge after that for her goat, whatever his name was. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff. There was one, after I had managed the game for a few months while Isaac was finishing some stuff, that's what he was most excited about when he came back to play it. And it's like, yes, it's like I said much earlier, we thought we could just do the next Dead of Winter and the next Dead of Winter and the next Dead of Winter. It's turned out to be way harder than expected. And we're never going to make the next Dead of Winter, but we hope we've captured something about that spirit in this game, and that's what we're so excited about.
So, how many pieces of silver are you going to have to pay in order to secure passage on this voyage of discovery?
We care a lot about affordability, and I can't believe it, because I remember buying... I remember getting Agricola back in the day, maybe for $60, and feeling like it was quite a lot. But this game is $59.95 US dollars, anyway, and it seems so affordable in the land of Kickstarter. You really get a lot in the box for it. Like I said, 2 different pads in this 80 page or so location book, and a ton of cardboard, like 6 things of cardboard. It is, and everything we've invested in the app and stuff. This location book, one side of the page is all the details of the actions. The other page is just this full 11 by 11 piece of artwork, basically. And, so half the location book is dedicated to that. And, it is, it's amazing stuff. And it's islands, and it's open seas, and it's enemy ships, and it's different kinds of monsters, which I definitely don't want to spoil what all the different monsters are that you'll run into. But
just keep teasing me and teasing me and teasing me. Oh, here's some information about the game that I'm not going to tell you about.
Well, our first conversation, we had that idea that, obviously Jerry had already, pioneered these adventure books, which are already super cool to just flip through. But but I just thought, I've never played much RPGs, but nobody can deny what a blast it is to just flip through a really cool RPG, Dungeon Master's Handbook, and just to look at the world and all the things. So our idea was in a board game to have something like that, where it's not really wouldn't exactly be spoilers in the same way it might be in one of Jerry's games to, flip through it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't tell you what happens, it just tells you the different settings, and that's essentially what it is. It's like an appendix of all the monsters and the ships and the islands you might run into when you play. And that ended up really happening, and I thought we would do like 20 locations, and Isaac just he basically came like, here's the locations, and he had a giant list that is almost exactly what we have at the end of the day, where I'm like, you want this Blue Fire Highlands for the Blue Fire religious zealots, and we're gonna have a whole island for this, and this is the first I'm hearing about this, and that's in there, so along with the things you would expect, giant multi-legged monsters and things like that.
Well, that's the reason I didn't ask about them, because I kind of took that as a given.
Yeah, for sure.
Where can people go to get a hold of this? I mean, I know that you had kind of like pre-orders on the site. So if people are interested, where can they go in order to find out more and potentially kind of get a copy of the game as well?
Yeah, they should go to, even if the pre-order is over by the time somebody listens to this, they can still go to preorder.fwcrossroads.com, and I'll make sure that redirects to wherever you can get the game at that moment. And that's our little mini site. So fwcrossroads.com is the app. Is how you get to the app, but preorder.fwcrossroads.com is right now where we're still taking orders, and we'll be, in a few days from when we're recording this, it'll be sort of officially in the pre-orderer's hands, but we'll still be taking orders at that time, as long as we have stock. So otherwise, we'd love you to support, local stores, and it's just a question of when it shows up there, which is, given the world circumstances, not something that anybody really has control over. So,
yeah.
I'm really hoping, I'm making a remote assist app to help people play it online. And once I build that, I'm hoping to just play it with people on the internet who are interested. So that's one of those things where you just want to do everything you can.
You need to get yourself lots of coffee.
Yeah, I drink quite a lot, so
there you go. No, what I'll do is I'll make sure that we put all the relevant notes in the show notes, so that we've got notes to show. If people want to keep an eye on your bad self, where can we find you on the internet webs?
Mostly on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Joe Pinion, JoePinion. And I, especially since we've been independent, I've been tried to be on there, and unfortunately I tweet a lot about Forgotten Waters because it's all I'm thinking about all the time. But if you want to engage me on any other topic, I would be happy to have a conversation on Twitter.
Cool. And if you good people want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you will find us in all those different places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races. If you do like what you've listened to tonight, then please tell somebody else about us, because it helps us grow and it helps us spread like butter. The other thing you can do is drop us a subscription on your podcast catcher of choice, or chuck us a buck via Patreon, because everybody needs the money, honey. And there you go. There's only 2 more things to do.
Oh yeah.
The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Joe?
Definitely not.
Fantastic. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a big thank you and goodbye to the pirate captain. The man who doesn't know... I was going to say the meaning of the word fear, but I'm sure he does.
Oh, yeah, definitely lately.
It's Captain Joseph Arthur Ellis, who's going to say goodbye in his best pirate voice, aren't you, Joe?
I'm mighty grateful for talking to you, Richard. King Richard, Private Richard, wherever you be, whatever your title be.
And it's and it'd be a goodbye. It'd be a goodbye from me. So beware you landlubbers. Whenever you go down the Tyne, watch out for your barnacles on your base. Don't scratch too hard, because you might hurt your fingers. But until the next time, you all come back now. You hear? Dar.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.